Thank you for joining us for our online focus group about downtown parking in North Kansas City. My name is Sarah Copeland, and I'm the North Kansas City Community Development Director. We would like to present to you some information about downtown parking, including a parking inventory, parking usage trends, and information from our recent opinion survey to provide you with a better background about parking in this area. Our parking management study focuses on the downtown area, as shown in this map. The boundaries of the area to the north are 21st Avenue, to the east, Howell, to the south side of 18th Avenue, and to the west, Burlington, shown here outlined in red. Within this area, there are a variety of parking areas, including publicly owned parking lots, on-street parking, and privately owned parking areas. As you look at this map, think for a minute. How many parking spaces do you think there are in downtown North Kansas City? If you guessed over 3,000, then you're right. We have a number of parking areas in downtown, from the large lot located at 18th and Howell, which has nearly 800 parking spaces available, to small lots behind some of the businesses off of Clay Street, which might have 4 or 5 or 10 parking spaces. This map shows you the numbers of some of these parking areas throughout downtown, including on-street parking spaces. In particular, we've outlined in black the angled parking spaces located along Armour and Swift in the heart of downtown, where we have 195 on-street parking spaces. So overall, all of these areas add up to over 3,600 parking spaces. As city staff started diving into some of our parking analysis, we decided to exclude a couple of these parking areas from our overall analysis that you'll see in later slides. So this map shows you that we've excluded the parking area near the bowling alley, which was 280 parking spaces, and the large parking lot at 18th and Howell, which was nearly 800 parking spaces. Future maps that you'll see in just a few minutes will show you percentages of parking used in downtown, excluding these two areas. With those areas excluded, downtown has 2,463 total parking spaces. To analyze how much of the parking is being used in downtown, we took parking counts on particular days in November. These were days prior to the holidays when the weather was temperate and we expected the usage to be pretty typical of what's usually happening in downtown. Parking was counted during morning hours, during a Thursday evening, and over a lunch period on a Monday. And then we did hourly counts of on-street parking spaces on a Tuesday over the lunch period. The next few maps that you will see show how parking is being used through downtown. This map shows parking usage during the morning period of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Areas that are shown with a blue hatch mark indicate areas where no vehicles were being parked. Green lots shown are up to a quarter full. Yellow areas are 1/4 to half full. Orange areas are half to 3/4 full, and red areas are areas with the most parking, where spaces are 75 to 100% used. You'll see down at the bottom, the chart shows overall parking usage for all of downtown. While there are certain lots that are full in the morning as employees start to report to their offices, there are other areas where no cars are parked, such as the lot near CVS, which is very lightly used at this time of day. The chart also shows the totals for all parking in downtown. Overall, parking in downtown from 8 to 10 a.m. is only 1/3 full. This map shows the percentages for individual parking areas throughout downtown. You can see that there are some areas that are heavily used, such as the on-street parking near Colony and Lamond, as well as the parking spaces behind those businesses along Armour. There are other areas where the parking is much lower. All of the city-owned parking lots shown in this map are less than half full at this time period. Overall, the parking supply shown in downtown is much higher than the parking demand in this period. In considering how to match up parking supply and demand, 85% utilization is often considered the sweet spot. Most of the parking is used, but there's still parking available for those coming to an area looking for a place to park. In the morning, with our 36% utilization, we are much below that 85% sweet spot. This map shows evening usage of parking. These counts were done on a Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. in an attempt to capture the parking generated by a lot of the entertainment uses in downtown. You can see that some areas are now less used as employees are beginning to leave downtown and parking is shifted to other areas of the city. In particular, you'll notice that parking is increased along 18th Avenue, where a lot of new entertainment uses are located. Here are the percentages of usage for the parking areas in this evening time period. You'll notice that the city-owned parking lot at 18th and Swift is 2/3 full during this time period, and a lot of the on-street parking located south of Armour and west of Swift is much more highly used at this time period. However, for downtown as a whole, parking areas are only 28% full, indicating that we are still far below the sweet spot of 85% usage. Downtown North Kansas City is a popular lunch destination, so these maps show utilization of parking during the lunch hour, 11 to 1 p.m. Parking areas near lunch destinations are most used during this time. However, there is still available parking throughout downtown. Overall, parking in the downtown area is still just around 50% during the midday peak hour. On-street angled parking in downtown is often cited as a key convenience that attracts people to downtown destinations. So we also did hourly counts to show how that parking is being used through the peak period during the day. These percentages show the percentage of on-street parking spaces that are being used at each hour. So this map shows 10 a.m. At this time period, there are some blocks where the angled parking spaces are 100% full, but others where there are very few cars parked in that particular block. In the 11 o'clock hour, on-street parking begins to increase as people begin coming to downtown North Kansas City for lunch, but there are still areas of on-street parking where there's a lot of capacity available. The noon hour is the peak hour for people visiting downtown North Kansas City for lunch and looking for a parking space. You can see that there are several blocks in this hour where the parking is almost 100% used, but there's also still available parking spaces on the street for people to use. This is the peak hour, but the parking is only 75% full at this time period. There are still parking spaces available on Armour and on Swift. In the 1 o'clock hour, we've passed the peak and people are starting to leave downtown. Here you can see that on-street parking at 1 o'clock has dropped from that high of 75% and is now only about 71% full. Some of these spaces are now becoming available for new people to visit. While we were counting cars and parking spaces in downtown in November, we also did some parking opinion surveys to get people's opinions about parking in the downtown area. There was a general opinion survey that received 398 responses, and also a specific survey for downtown business owners, which received 53 responses. We'd like to give you a quick overview of the information we learned from both of those surveys. One question we asked was how often people come to visit downtown. Of the nearly 400 people who took our general parking survey, 3/4 visit downtown daily or frequently, several times a week. So these are people who are familiar with downtown North Kansas City. How do people get to North Kansas City? Mostly they're driving. Only 8% of people taking the survey walk, bike, or use transit to get to downtown North Kansas City. And while yes, this study is a parking management study, one of the suggestions from this question is that one way to manage the cars in downtown would be to encourage more people to walk, bike, or use transit, so that we need to provide parking for fewer cars. Even if that percentage only increased a little bit, that's still fewer vehicles that we need to make room for in downtown. The survey asked for a general feeling about how convenient parking is. Parking is either convenient and easy to find, less convenient than some areas, but not bad, inconvenient and difficult to find, a reason to walk, bike, or take transit to downtown, or a deterrent to visiting the area altogether. 74% of people say that parking is at least somewhat convenient in downtown. We also asked if anyone had ever given up finding a parking space and just left downtown. More than half of respondents said that that had never happened to them, and 86% said either never or only once or twice. We wanted to know how hard or easy it is for people visiting downtown to find a place to park. This question we asked in two different ways. First, we asked how people find a parking space. Do you drive right to it? Usually circle the block to find a place? Circle the block twice? Circle the block and then go to an off-street parking area, or find a space in some other way? 69% of people either find a space immediately by driving right to it or circle the block one time. The second way we asked this question was to ask how long it takes to find a parking space. Right away, in 1 to 2 minutes, in 2 to 5 minutes, in 5 to 10 minutes, or more than 10 minutes. 45% of respondents said it takes less than 2 minutes to find a parking space, and 83% of people said it takes them less than 5 minutes to find a parking space in downtown. So what conclusions do we draw from this? Overall, parking in downtown is very convenient. We are drawing these conclusions from the fact that many of the survey respondents say that parking is convenient, that they have never not found a parking space, that they can find a parking space easily and in not much time. The survey also asked some questions about potential barriers to finding a parking space. For example, perhaps one barrier to finding a parking space is the distance that someone might need to walk from the parking space to their destination in downtown. We asked how far a person might be willing to walk from a parking space to a destination. And you can see that people are willing to walk 1 or 2 to 3 blocks from a parking space to their destination, indicating that walking is not a high barrier for finding a good parking space. We were also wondering how people travel from spot to spot in downtown. If your visit to downtown took you to more than one place, for example, visiting a restaurant and then going to see a movie, how did you get from point A to point B? 60% of survey respondents had visited more than one establishment in their last visit to downtown North Kansas City, and 80% of those people had walked from point A to point B, again demonstrating that walking is not a deterrent to parking in downtown. Of the potential barriers to finding a parking space that we asked about in the survey, none of them really stood out, except for this one, knowledge. Keep in mind that the people answering this survey are frequent visitors to downtown North Kansas City. However, when we asked, do you know where to find a public off-street parking lot, 43% of survey respondents expressed some doubt, either saying they think they know where a lot is but aren't sure, or no, I don't know where to find a public off-street parking lot. This indicates that knowing where to find a parking space is a very important consideration for downtown parking. We also asked survey respondents to rank the factors that influence their decision on where to park from most important to least important. There's a lot of information in this chart, but what it shows at the top is the most important factors and at the bottom the least important factors. Ease of finding a parking space came out as the most important factor driving a decision about where to park someone's car. And the least important factor, comfortable or enjoyable walk to their destination. What's also interesting in this chart is that the ease of finding a space is more important than how far that space is from a person's overall destination. We asked slightly different questions of downtown business owners and want to provide just a quick overview of some of their answers. One question asked downtown business owners to identify the single biggest transportation issue facing their business. Inability to find parking close by was the most popular answer. The second most popular answer was loading or unloading or delivery access to their business. We also asked, how convenient is parking for your patrons? 45% of business owners believe that parking is at least somewhat convenient for people patronizing their business. What's interesting about this question is that it shows a big disconnect between downtown business owners and people visiting downtown, where 74% of visitors said parking was at least somewhat convenient, much more than downtown business owners. We also asked downtown business owners what transportation improvements would benefit their business. For this question, we allowed respondents to choose as many answers as they felt would be beneficial. The most popular answer was more parking. The second was improved signage. 30% of business owners would like to see more signage directing people to parking in downtown. The third most popular was more turnover in parking spaces. And finally, 1/5 of respondents said no changes were necessary. I hope that this information about downtown parking has been both interesting and informative. You can share your thoughts and ideas about downtown parking online at www.surveymonkey.com/r/nkc-parking. Thank you very much.